Welcome to Intelligent Human Leadership, leading yourself and your team. Do you ever find yourself grappling with a lack of confidence in your team? Or battling the relentless waves of concern and fear? Are the pressures to meet client expectations and the burden of missed opportunities weighing you down? On this podcast, you'll discover the strategies and insights that will reignite your team's morale and help you find the harmony and knowledge you seek to propel your business forward. Here, we explore innovative ways to reignite your creative spirit and achieve greatness, empowering you to lead with intelligence, compassion, and resilience. If you're ready to dive deep into your core of leadership challenges and be guided toward success, here's your host, founder of Steward Your Business, David Carr.
Welcome back. So glad to have you here at the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast. This week, I thought it would be timely to jump into a topic of storms. Unfortunately, for those of you, when I'm recording this at the beginning of October, there's another amazing, unfortunately, very, very powerful hurricane coming into the area of Florida. There was another one recently that just occurred, Helene, leaving a path of destruction and really turning over people's lives, unfortunately. And the reality is, storms are going to come into our lives. Whether we like it or not, storms are going to happen. But what can we do as leaders and team members entering or exiting an organization, doing it in the least destructive way possible? And that's what I'm going to be talking about today on this episode of the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast, is navigating the storms of change that inevitably come and how you can be prepared. For myself, you've heard in a recent episode, we had to be evacuated because of wildfires here in Southern California. These things come and they're going to happen. And so if you're not being proactive and prepared, you're going to have even more challenges layered upon this in these storms. And so I'm all about empowering you here on the podcast, giving you knowledge, turning that into wisdom and applying it in your daily life, that you are the most effective leader in your leading yourself, your teams, your organization. And so I'm going to share in this podcast some examples from my past history to help inform you, educate you, and hopefully get you better prepared for the storms that are inevitably coming. Oftentimes, if, like I said, you look at these storms, they can be destructive, very destructive, and if not proactively managed. Now, there's things we can obviously do to be prepared. Now, that doesn't mitigate everything, but it certainly helps dealing with external concerns, internal concern with an organization, and just philosophically, how do we show up? How do we lead ourselves well? And so when we have a team member leaving, for example, and I just had a conversation on my other podcast, the Business Roundtable podcast, in case you want to listen, where I interviewed a professional recruiter, and we're talking about the disruption of losing key team members and how do we retain them and how do we get them in there. But, when you unexpectedly and are not prepared for the loss of a team member, this can, manifest a lot of challenges for you. If you're not being proactive and thinking about this, you may think, we've got lots of people on the team, we can cover it. I will tell you, if this person's done their job well, they've made themselves hopefully indispensable in a good way. Hopefully they haven't made themselves irreplaceable, but that makes it even worse if they have, but indispensable, meaning your clients or stakeholders are going to ask some questions about what's happening to this team, what's going on. There could be uncertainty being created if it's not managed well. And so if you don't have a strategy for transitions, your disruption and the length of that disruption in providing service, delivery, right? Your project schedule could be vastly impacted. causing your clients to question your ability to support them. And so there are operational gaps that come here, logistics, responsibilities left unfilled that affect the workflow. Again, project deadlines and then team readiness, the dynamics there. And so I've seen this firsthand. And I think, unfortunately, as a leader or business owner, you may underestimate that impact of that team member. I just want to encourage you to evaluate what would happen if you lost a team member here or there on a project in your organization, and be prepared for that impact, because something's going to happen. It could be leaving, not on bad terms, right? They're being relocated. Their spouses got a new position. Life changes. They need to take care of a sick parent. I've talked about that in past episodes, having to take care of my dad and take time off or leave. And it may not be they're leaving forever, but it could mean they're leaving temporarily. Even I work with team members, they are on maternity leave, right? And so how are they going to be gone for months on end? Possibly. Now, some of these you can plan for, and other things you're unexpected, but you can still do some planning. You don't have to be at 0 and go from 0 to 60. It's very taxing. You may not have all the energy and the resources when that actually occurs, which means you're going to have more challenges there. I wanted you to think internally of the emotional, cultural shock that may come as that person steps away. This happened with me in another organization where I was that connector voice you may have heard me talk about in previous podcasts, but the kind of relational glue, if you will, within the organization. And I left that organization, and that void was lasting. It was reverberating, and there wasn't a plan to replace me in that place. And I heard from a lot of team members subsequently that they reached out to me and said, we really missed that. And ultimately led to some of them leaving the organization. I was just part of that. It wasn't all just because of me. I'm not that important, but you need to be understanding and recognize the emotional reactions and make sure that the team feels secure in the midst of change. How are you going to do that? What's your plan? What's your approach there? A quick little email memo probably is not going to do the trick. Even a quick or an all hands meeting addressing the issue, I find is oftentimes left people longing for more answers, what's going on. And so again, if you're not prepared, trained, you don't have somebody there to help you through this point of transition, it can be very difficult on your organization. Develop hard on you as the leader, right? Because you have to restore, rebuild trust, perhaps internally and externally internally with your team, externally with your stakeholders. And if you're not paying attention to that, think of that as a foundation being eroded. Then you could lose what you've built up. And I don't want to see that happen for you as a leader, as a business owner, and all you've worked to build your business, your team, to see that undermined and lost. We want you building on solid ground. We want you prepared for the storms that will come, and that you're going to, after that storm goes, you're still standing. I've watched some of these videos recently of Hurricane Helene, and just the way it literally swept away houses and swept away. I mean, it's just incredible power. That can happen to an organization if you're not being prepared for change and things that are to come. Now, we can be proactive. That's why I want you to be that intelligent human leader, being emotionally, having that IQ, right? The understanding to successfully lead your team and continue to build on that trust, build on the solid foundation. If you're losing a team member, let's say, you may be losing also your vision or values, possibly. They may take a sense of the mission or be that cultural glue. And so we need to be sure that as an organization, you don't lose that core value and sense of yourself. You as a leader or you as the business owner, you're part of it. But remember, this is an entity. This organization isn't just you. We need to make sure that the mission doesn't drift, we don't lose ourselves as this person leaves. I worked with another company where the president of that company left. There was a new president that came in, great gentleman, but I personally didn't feel it was clear on the mission, vision, values. It got fuzzy. I don't think it was completely, in the ditch, but for me, that was a struggle, and ultimately led to me personally leaving and trying to find a new place and a new way. And if we're not being cognizant of that, we can get lost. We can start going after things that are not in alignment with our mission, because we're trying to figure out our ways a little bit here, and we're a little unsteady. If you ever, I've done a lot of work as a biologist in the field and trying to walk up and down hills. And if you're unsteady, you slip, you fall, you can really hurt yourself. Now, if you steady yourself and you get right people alongside you, get step on the right rock, you have somebody hold your hand, lift up, you can make it through the challenging times much better than trying to go it alone. Think about that too. We go farther together than we do alone. And sometimes you just have this sense of, as a leader or business owner, I just got to figure it out. I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to say here to you, and I really encourage you here on this podcast, is that through Steward Your Business, you have an advocate here that has been in that place, that has gone before you, and that can help navigate you and be a trusted advisor, somebody that you can talk to, your coach, confident consultant, to help guide you through that. And that's why I create this podcast, is that I'm giving you support. Here, I can't solve all your problems on the podcast, but I can certainly give you some understanding and point you in the right direction. And as you hear this and you're saying, dang, David, you're addressing an issue that I'm facing right now, or I know that this is going to come up soon, or, I want to be better prepared, then that's where we have the conversation and discover whether or not, there's other tools and resources that I can bring in. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on the podcast today that I can help you with. But just as we lose somebody, even new people come in, there's an impact in the storm. You may not think that. You may not think, well, this is a new person. This is great. They're coming in. There's still a storm in that too, where I've worked with a leadership team, and every time there was a new person coming in, it kind of was like shuffling the deck, if you will. And so it's kind of everybody kind of reassessing where they're at. What's the pecking order, so to speak? Where do I fit in now? And if you're not being cognizant of that and being intentional, it can be really challenging to kind of get everybody aligned and calibrated. If you're really clear on that, and you're clear on roles and responsibilities, then you can set people up for success. So we want to look at things externally. You want to look at client and market perception, how does that somebody come in? Oftentimes it's a positive thing. Hey, we're bringing somebody new into the mix. Here's the thing, how about, but clients may ask, why did you need to bring in this new person? And so it's important that you have a narrative and a story and a way of explaining how they integrate, how they work with you, what's the plan here. But recognize when you have new leaders come in, even the best of the best, there's going to be a time of transition. And oftentimes it's months, honestly, where they get up to speed, they understand what's going on, right? With the current processes, the current team members, what's working, what's not working, what's the established workflows. And so that they can get an understanding and they get up to speed, operational momentum, so to speak, so that they can then start to innovate, create, using their strengths and abilities, but they have to understand kind of the lay of the land, and that takes time. We have to make sure that there's a cultural fit, right? That there's the team dynamics and the personalities work well and they don't cause friction. This is something I just talked about on the Business Roundtable podcast episode that's coming out here as well in October. If you're listening to this right in this month, but we talked about some of the conflict in personality, and you're not a good fit. That's the worst thing for a recruiter, to hire somebody, and then they have to fire or let go of that person because they're like, it's just not a good cultural fit. Your team may struggle to accept this new person, this new leadership. You may think they're great as a business owner or leader, possibly, but you need to get buy-in. You need to get people that are going to be supporting this new individual coming into the organization, because this new person coming in may inadvertently disrupt your cohesion of your team. And so again, building on trust. If you don't have that, it's going to be difficult to motivate your team. And so you need to take proactive steps. And there's exercises, and there's some things I can do with the 5 voices framework, for example, that we ensure new team leaders, members become part of this organizational fabric, the life of this organization, the shared language that you have, so they understand where they fit. This is really important, especially in a small, growing organization. Each person that you add into the team, it's really vital that they are buying in and into this trust building and culture fit, and maintaining that organizational identity. This new person may have their own vision. They may have a way of addressing some things, which may or may not be in the way that the company has previously existed. And so it may be in conflict, possibly. And leaders need to make sure they're balancing any kind of new perspectives, new initiatives, while ensuring alignment with the overall organizational core values. That's why it's really clear. You need to be really clear on your values, what you're about, where you're going, what this vision that you're going to have for the organization. And so those are just some internal and external problems and philosophical problems that you're going to face. I want to give you, obviously, always some potential solutions here, but I want you to take a moment and reflect back on just some of the things I've shared here with you. Have you accounted for, losing a team member or bringing somebody in? We'd like to think it's so easy just to slip people in and out, but the reality is it's one of the most expensive things of bringing somebody in or losing somebody. The time it takes to get people up to speed, the investment. And if you're not being proactive on that, and you may say, why would I want to hire a consultant or somebody like myself? It's because I'm going to help make it smoother for you, make that transition and get people up to speed and work on both your production and your production capacity to increase those in parallel. We don't want to be off on one or the other. We want to make sure that we get things right, the first things first, and really that's your organizational health and making sure your team is all in alignment. And so how do we do that? How do we proactively manage change, right? Well, externally, we can start with being clear in our communication with our stakeholders, letting them know, hey, we're having this transition, this person has departed, or we have this new person coming in. And introducing them, be intentional. We want to avoid speculation. We want to ensure continuity. We don't want to damage our relationships. We don't want gossip out there. We want to be leading the story. We want to be sharing and setting the stage for what is. We don't want others to run with it, especially our clients, especially our employees. And so we want to make sure that we're planned for this. Do we have a contingency plan for when key people leave, including cross-training and successional planning? How are you, developing your team? Are you being intentional with that? Or are you just kind of being happenstance? And those that are more intentional will ride the wave of change, if you will, successfully. The ones that don't are going to crash. Can they recover? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. If you're planning for this or knowing that there's this change, just like you would in a financial portfolio, let's just say, for those of you that are financially oriented, I've been meeting with my team on that regard, and we're looking at different elements to mitigate risk, right? So we're looking at different ways that we can do that. You want to kind of do that with your whole team and your operational readiness as well. You want to be prepared there. And again, you may not have all these skills, and that's okay. That's why you hire outside consultants. That's why you have other people and advisors help you look at things where you may have blind spots. I think it's vitally important that we do these regular checkups and make sure that we're moving in alignment. I work with business owners, for example, that want to make sure their companies are evaluated correctly. And the way you evaluate your company as far as its actual worth on the market is you have to look at that maybe annually, getting an assessment of like, where are we at? And I do that assessment, and that's one way we can decide if it's a good fit to work together. But we were looking at, making sure that we have clear communication, operational readiness. Are we providing that emotional support and cultural preservation? Are you actually having the open dialogue and the discussions with your team to actually hear their emotional concerns and have transparency and clarity throughout the change to build that trust and stability? Or are you kind of like setting it and hoping that it'll work out somehow, but you're like, I don't feel comfortable with this. I'm not sure. I've never done this before. Or it's awkward. Absolutely. That's where you can have help along the line. You can use like the 5 Voices framework. 5 Voices for Team is a whole workshop and a guidance and way I can help you. So we're intentionally supporting that. We're mitigating the challenges and as the shifts come up, right? To help work through these transitions, to ensure everybody's voice is heard, valued through these periods of adjustment and transition, whether staff coming in or leaving. And finally, we look at reinforcing our core values, that making sure that our core values are front and center, that we lead from the mission, that we know where we're going, we maintain alignment, we cast the vision of where we're going proactively, and recognize the contributions of that person that was there and say thank you, and we appreciate that, and this is where we're going now, and we're building on that. Or as somebody else new comes in and they say, hey, they've got some ideas, how we're going to bridge that continuity into the future. By doing this, you become that intelligent human leader. And that's what we're all about here on this podcast. I want to encourage you to evaluate your processes for managing leadership transitions. Do you have systems in place? Have you planned both for external and communication and internal alignment? You can look at something like the Giant Support Challenge Matrix, which I've talked about in previous podcasts, to ensure that your team is both supported and challenged during these times of transition. And I have guidance and leadership transition checklists and onboarding guides to help with this. And so through a discovery call, which I don't do at any cost, it's just a matter of getting on the call and Zoom, Teams, whatnot, and hearing and finding out where you're at, and then saying, here's tools, here's resources that I believe that could help you in preparing, warding off, unforeseen challenges or mitigating risks to your ever-changing team and dynamics. By doing this, by looking at these things internally, externally, and philosophically, how do we show up as leaders and team owners? We're going to be able to be that intelligent human leader. We're going to be able to navigate the storms that inevitably are going to come. They're going to go to, whether it be fire, hurricane, there is something that's going to come, some more expected than others, but I want to help you be that most intelligent leader. If you found this helpful today, as you're listening to the podcast, you're like, David, I know I'm not alone. I know there's somebody there. There's an advocate for me that can take me and get me out of this pit I'm finding myself in. Possibly you're in this pit right now and you're like, man, this is really hard. I need some help. Reach out. Let's get on a call and find out how I can help you. You can just reach out to me. Follow me on any of the social platforms. I'm all there. LinkedIn, YouTube, all of those good things. Facebook. You can even find me on TikTok. Post there as well. But really, I'm trying to be there for you and provide you the resources that you need to be that leader. The leader that others look to and say, that person is the healthiest person in the room. That person I trust, that person I know, and that's the person I want to work with and I want to have on my team. I appreciate you listening again. Thank you so much. Continue to subscribe, like, comment, share your thoughts. I look forward to hearing from you and sharing next week's episode with you. Take care. Thanks, everybody.